Welcome, everyone. Episode 2 of the JobConscious video series. I have my guest here, Joe Amditis. He'll introduce himself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Joe Amditis. I'm Associate Director of the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. And my job involves local news mostly, especially New Jersey. Yep.
So you started off in New Jersey, you said?
Yeah, I was born in Jersey, moved down to North Carolina for about 12 years, lived there, then moved back up to the same street in Ringwood, New Jersey. And I've been here sort of ever since. Took a brief stint to Iraq and back, but that's...
and we'll touch on that a little bit later. But
yeah.
Ringwood, New Jersey. Did anything within New Jersey pique your interest in news? I know New Jersey's always in the news.
New Jersey is so interesting. A hometown tie-in that you might have heard of. Everybody sort of knows what a Superfund site is. Toxic contamination, a toxic spill site. That's so bad that the federal government had to step in and classify and allocate funds to fix it. Ringwood has the only Superfund site in the country that's ever been shut down and then reopened because they didn't apparently do a good enough job. There's an HBO documentary actually called Man vs. Ford, which focuses on denizens of Ringwood.
They should put them on the sign when you come in.
Yeah,
Ringwood, New
so
Jersey.
dirty we had to clean it up twice. Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I mean, it really is. Ringwood is beautiful. Most of New Jersey is beautiful and gets a bad rap, but Northern Jersey in particular is I love the mountains. I love the lakes. I'm not a huge deep water like surfing or swimming on the beach thing. I don't like the beach, but yeah, that mountain. We have the Wanacue Reservoir up there. It's gorgeous. It's a great place. I like to say a great place to grow up, a great place to grow old. But you got to get out in the middle.
That's where we reached North Carolina.
That's where I'm at. That's where I'm at now as well. Yeah.
What do you think about North Carolina?
North Carolina is great in many ways. It's also way spread out. It's south, so everything's sort of slower. I love New Jersey. I just can't stay away.
That's what brought you back.
Yeah, seriously. Plus, when you're born in New Jersey, I moved down there when I was like a year and a half old, but still, I was the kid from the north down there, and then I moved back to Ringwood, and all of a sudden, I've been so much time down south. I'm the new kid from the south. So, a man with no home kind of a thing.
Something tells me you're always the kid somewhere doing something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But while you were in New Jersey, or just even in North Carolina growing up, what got you interested in the news?
Oh man, I wasn't actually that interested in the news. I grew up very right wing actually.
Yeah.
I grew up very right wing and conservative Southern home, Southern Baptist, and I was mostly at the time. I don't even know. Like I didn't really have a thing, where you want to be when you grow up. I didn't get involved in the news, especially local news, until I got back from Iraq, when I went to college at Rutgers, and I majored in political science and double majored in criminal justice.
And you double minored.
And I double minored, yes. Don't be fooled, folks. It's all about overlap, and we'll talk about that. If you take the right amount of courses, luckily, you can actually get 2 degrees.
I was going to ask you, but what made you go to Rutgers? Was that an interest? I feel like we're going to touch on something here.
So I got rejected from Rutgers. I guess let me go back. I wanted to be a graphic designer.
Okay.
I wanted to be a graphic designer. I wanted to design video games, and I did actually up until when I was 15 or 16 with my little brother. We used to have a Halo modding website, and we would mod Halo. We would do tutorials on how to make new weapons and stuff like that.
Website?
And we built the website. We built the models for the game. We imported them. We even made our own levels in Halo on PC and stuff. And so I was like dead set on that. And I don't actually know what happened. I won a Craftsman Fair award for North Jersey at one point.
When you started
this is like high school, like early mid high school. So it's about 14, anywhere from 14 to age 17.
How'd you get all this information just to get started?
The internet, man. The internet. I liked video games, and I hated school, but I liked video games, and I liked drawing and designing things. I suck at math. I'm terrible at math. I'm not good in like the musical arts and things like that. I did musical theater as a kid and everything, and I love that stuff. But my whole family on my dad's side is like musicians and artists, and I was just sort of graphic design and video game design was sort of the halfway point between actual art per se and more of like creative applications.
So you kind of get to test drive a little bit of everything.
I really did. My whole life I've just been dabbling. I've been this cliche sort of jack of all trades, master of none thing.
That's me.
My brother actually continued on does CAD, computer aided design stuff now for an engineering firm. Thankfully,
Does he still keep that in his portfolio?
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's the funny thing is I got rejected from the Rutgers School of Arts and Sciences, which is the sort of the liberal arts, focus, the brainchild of Rutgers, and I also submitted a graphic design portfolio to the Mason Gross School of the Arts. So I got into Mason Gross, thankfully. It was I went to Rutgers. It was the only school I applied to because I was lazy. I didn't want to do anything. I like half filled out an application to Montclair, and then my dad went to Rutgers, so I was super excited about that. And he never graduated though.
Yeah, so you wanted the one up?
I wanted to do I wanted to like follow in the footsteps thing. Not so much anymore, I guess. But yeah, so I did that, and I hated art school. I mean, I like art to a certain extent, but I'm no artist, let alone an art student. That's a lot of just pretentious. I mean, it's bad. It's exactly what you think it is. Also, I was kind of a jerk at the time.
Not anymore.
Yeah. Well, I was more of a jerk then. I just got married from Iraq. I was in like the best shape of my life.
Exactly.
I felt it was like hot stuff. You know, I was like, okay.
Ready to take on college.
Yeah, exactly. And I was a year older, 2 years older than everybody because I went to Iraq in between high school and college and came back.
The older, wiser connection.
Yeah, I was like buying beer my second semester, so I was like a god, you know. But so I actually transferred out of Mason Gross into the Arts and Sciences program. Luckily, they allowed me to do that after one semester, even with a 2.5 GPA, which to this day I don't know why they let me do that.
What did you think of Mason Gross?
It's a great school. It's a fantastic school. One of the best classes I ever had was my video class. Is actually all of this is sort of leading towards what I do now, accidentally, because I learned video editing skills and production, and in fact I actually used some of the footage that I'd taken over in Iraq to make a little micro documentary as one of the assignments. I had a lot of footage available that other people didn't have.
I was going to say, let's.
I got an A in the class, which is great. Yeah. But then I got to I wanted to go to criminal justice because in my mind, or at least how I rationalize it now, criminal justice, there's math, there's art, and then in between there's language. Yeah. So there's rules for math, absolute rules for math. There's almost no rules for art. And in criminal justice and law, which is where I thought I was going to go, if you talk about anything long enough, the rule can change. You can change the rule. You know what I mean?
Were you thinking this at the time when you...
I'd like to think I was, but I think so. I think it was more of sort of like a natural tendency to go towards something that was not as like intellectually challenging in many ways.
Because when you hear criminal justice and political science, you probably didn't think you'd be in the role that you're in right now.
No, and in fact, I was on a law school path. I wanted to go to law school. I had I was so spoiled because I had a mentor and a professor at Rutgers named Lennox Hines, who's now retired. But he's Nelson Mandela's attorney. He was Assata Shakur's attorney. He's worked on the Mumia Abu-Jamal campaign. I mean, he is a legend in all senses. Angela Davis. He was Angela Davis's attorney. She came and spoke, and I got to meet her at his retirement ceremony. Like, it's wild. And so I latched on to him and a couple other professors at Rutgers. And I was so spoiled by the quality of faculty that they had in those programs, and ended up, I learned eventually after about a year and a half at Rutgers, I found something I was good at, or at least I could feel like I was moving forward and I could sense progress. It took me sort of getting mad at not doing that well, and then trying to challenge somebody, like one of the professors, on their own terms. I just decided, it's so funny, I decided to I'll read all the readings and I'll tell you what's really good, and I'll read even more than you, and then I'll know more. Sort of tricked myself by accident into actually just doing the work. And it turns out if you do the work and read the extra stuff, then you know the answers, and it becomes a lot easier.
When you were in college, did you have any second thoughts about what you were doing at all?
Yeah, so I took the LSAT. I filled out all the applications for law school. I got letters of recommendation, and at the last moment I decided not to send any of them in and pick up a poli-sci major, because at the time I had just started studying, one of the classes I was taking, philosophy. It wasn't a philosophy class, but I was being introduced to a lot of this work, and I was reading a lot on my own, and it just felt like all of the rules that you have to abide by as an attorney, upon threat of disbarment and all kinds of things. It seemed very limiting, and I didn't feel like I was done sort of exploring, philosophically or intellectually and things like that. So I pivoted to the political science major, and then went to the GRE because I was like, oh, I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to go to poli-sci PhD. I'm going to apply to these programs. And then I applied to 5 of the best schools in the country. Got rejected from every single one. Yeah, but along the way, I was doing these, I'm doing these political science research projects. I'm just burying myself in them, and I'm finding these amazing, intricate, nuanced and true stories from different continents and countries all around the world that I wasn't seeing in any of the media or in any of the movies or what have you. And they're out there. People are writing about them, but they're in academic journals. They're in poli-sci journals.
Right.
Nobody reads that. I barely read them. And so I started sort of like yelling at the internet. I started like writing on sort of like jmditis.com because of course catchy name title, site title. And I just started like writing blog posts. It's sort of my first foray into there. A buddy of mine I went to high school, I found out he was the opinions editor at the Daily Targum. He asked me if I wanted an opinion column, which I didn't know what the heck that was. Oh, yeah. So I had like spent like 2-3 weeks researching what it was. Yeah. I thought I had to have like a syllabus of what I needed to write about over the course, and it turns out they just want you to spit out 800 words every 2 weeks on a topical
and that's not what the job description says, but that's totally what it is, right?
I went the long end around way to finding that out, and then from there we both sort of shared a lot of frustrations about the way that the Daily Targum covered certain topics. Particularly for me, it was the way they covered war. I mean, it's a college newspaper, but more of a general critique of how the media covers war, and generally pro-war in almost every single case. And so we started our own. We started our own publication. We said we'll just make a website. We'll call it Muckgers for Muck Raking Rutgers. And we'll do the stories that the Daily Targum won't do, and we'll do it from the perspective of folks who don't have a representation there. From people like anti-war people, critical perspectives, more adversarial and less concerned about access and fraternal relations between PR people and stuff.
Especially with starting your own publication. I mean, what was the entry process to that? What was the day-to-day?
So we started Kickstarter. We raised like $450. We just needed we want to run the website, we want to like hosting costs, and we want to pay somebody to like design the theme or whatever. Yeah. So I think we raised like $600 or something, and that was enough. We didn't much for that. I mean, certain people had contacts, like Chase Brush is the guy who I started it with, along with Simon Galperin, and they had worked for the Targum for a while, so they knew some people in media. I mean, we just connections. Yeah, I mean, you're at a college campus, if you market it right, we did a little video, we did all the things that sort of felt like you would do, and tried to pitch it in a way that, hey, if you got $30, kind of a thing, we would do. Yeah, so you're doing, yeah. But there was no like handbook. We said, well, we got to make a video, so let's make a video. We just sat on campus, and it was great. I actually came onto the project. I found out he was doing this Kickstarter, and I donated like $200 because I love the guy. He's great. I didn't know he was doing it. I tried to donate anonymously. I didn't know that he would be able to see. And he called me up and was like, dude, like, what are you doing? Do you want to be in on this? I was like, oh, yeah, totally. I didn't realize that was an option. So from there, funny enough, we sort of applied as a joke to this little micro-grant program that was being run out of Montclair State, which was then called the New Jersey News Commons, out of the School of Communication and Media, where they were going to give up to like $4,000 grants to these news startups. And so we applied. We're like, of course we're never going to get this. We're just
Did you have a lot of competition at the time? Was that something that was growing?
I mean, at the time, yeah. So this is right around the time that the News Commons, the New Jersey News Commons was being formed, which was to address the sort of mass layoffs that local journalists in New Jersey have faced, the like absolute mayhem that came with Hurricane Sandy and the lack of coordination and collaborative journalism, and then also the closure of the NJN, New Jersey Network, our only public TV station. So
how old were you at the time?
I was, let's see, what is it, 2012? So I was 23, 24. Yeah. So
did you think at any point that at 23 you'd be starting your own like news startup?
I mean, not really. I've never been an entrepreneur. I've just sort of been a tinkerer more than anything else. And I was more interested in supporting that project as opposed to leading it or anything. I saw Chase as the leader and just was like, I wanted to support what he was doing because I was all about it. And he also let me write. He's a great editor. He's a brilliant writer. And he let me write all the nonsense that, a fresh college graduate gets mad about and writes. We need independent media now. What about the church committee report? Like, I was like super
into it.
Food
in the dining commons.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and more parking. Yeah, exactly. So,
especially here. Oof.
But we got the grant, which was crazy. And all of a sudden, we're like, we have money now. We have to take this seriously. Like, this is a legitimate organization. It's giving us money. What do we do? Oh, my God. And
that's when they kind of set in that you were doing this.
Like we got office space on a co-working space for 2 months at $400 a month and quickly realized that wasn't sustainable. And we're like, well, I don't need an office. And we just went through this whole like process of, just trying stuff with almost nothing at stake, which was amazing because Montclair State, New Jersey News Commons grants do not come with a lot of oversight. which we didn't know at the time. But they basically gave us this money and were like, do good work. And we were like, okay, we were planning on doing that anyway. So thanks for the money.
That's like a tagline for someone giving you money.
I wish it was. But that's ended up actually how I got this job is because I was among, Muckgers was among like 13 other publications or startups that got those grants.
Right.
And as part of the grant, it wasn't just here's the money, it was here's the money and you can work with Joe Michaud, our business coach, on how to actually do this.
This is here.
And this was at Montclair.
Yeah.
So I was driving from Rutgers to Montclair every month for these in-person, learning lunches, peer learning sessions, and I just stuck to it like glue. I was at every single one of them, mostly because nobody else from Muckgers was, either willing or able to go up there.
Yeah.
But also because I was almost done. I was done with college at that point. 2013 is when I graduated, and so I'm doing this program. I got nothing else to do. You know what I mean? I'm in between jobs and stuff. I just got rejected from every grad school I applied to, or I think the rejections were still sort of coming in on a rolling basis because this was early in the year.
A few months later, you go, I forgot I even applied.
And I just attached myself at the hip to Debbie Gallant, who was the associate director at the time, and tried to help her with anything I could. And a lot of them, to be honest, a lot of it was like, hey, this PowerPoint's not working. Oh, yeah, I'll help you. I got this. And a lot of that, and just making myself known in that area and being a regular there and taking advantage of all the things they offered was, to them, a signal of my commitment. It was like, you don't realize how much, first of all, how much money people have to give away. There's so many rich people and foundations that need those tax write-offs.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many grants available. We have $1,000 travel grants available right now with almost no strings attached, and we have to beg people to apply for them. Because people don't think that they're worthy or whatever.
Why do you think that's such an issue?
Well, I think partly it's imposter syndrome, and it's that feeling that we got as like applying for a joke and then thinking, oh my God, we actually got it. And in most cases, literally showing up is half the battle, if not more. And I didn't know that at the time, and I don't expect people to know that unless you've been involved in actual managing grants and stuff.
Exactly.
Because you're like, oh my God, please just ask for this money in a reasonable, coherent way, and we will be happy to give it to you. Just go do good work, right? So I've tried to take that philosophy and how I do with my grants and stuff. But yeah, so we did that, and then the coordinator at the time, Mary Mann, quit to go launch her own news site, and there was an opening. And so I applied, and apparently 93 other applications, and somehow I got the job. I think it was partly related to all the time I spent already doing the job, essentially. And now I was just like, hey, if you could pay me I could do this full time, I would do so much more. I work at a taste testing lab right now. Please save me from that and let me work for you full time.
What's this taste testing lab? I want to hear this.
I worked at Gustatech. It's a subsidiary of Chromacell in New Brunswick. For 4 years I worked there. Started as a taste tester, worked my way up to part-time taste test administrator.
What were you tasting?
You taste like sugar water, crackers, turkey cubes. I think we did mac and cheese, which was great.
Especially you didn't have a big grocery bill.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to. They tell you not to swallow it, which is probably smart. You do your taste of one sample. You're basically trying to figure out which sample is more bitter or less bitter or more salty, and then many iterations of that will allow the company to determine good levels of sodium versus sodium chloride versus I don't know what the other one. It's like the more bitter version, but healthier version of salt.
Sooner or later, we'll have someone come in and bring in some food for you.
Get some food science. Like I said, I have no food science degree or whatever, and I ended up as a full-time job with benefits.
How did you find that? That was after college? Was that after Rutgers?
I think a buddy of mine, I was able to study in between samples, and that was huge. So I did my homework while I was getting paid, which was amazing.
And then you were also eating, which took away that.
Yeah, and then I just stuck with it. I was like, well, this is solid. I'm just going to do this, and I could walk there.
So to tie this back in, you were in the Army National Guard.
I was, yes, for 7 whole years. I joined when I was 17 in 2006, and was deployed in 2008 to Iraq, and came back in 2009, and then I started school.
What inspired you to join?
Dude, I was asleep in auto class. I was on the wrestling team in high school, varsity wrestling, literally because I was the only one who weighed under 103 pounds. I was a 98-pound freshman year in high school, and I got the varsity spot on the 103, and I hated it because I was terrible, and the state champ was coming in next year. So he came in, I hated wrestling, I wanted to quit it, and I wasn't able to afford college without it.
Right.
They came in while I was sleeping in auto class and said the words free college, and I was like, what's up? And I looked and I joined the infantry because I'm an idiot I guess. But I was like, obstacle courses, whatever, National Guard, I can do this.
Right.
And went to basic training in between junior and senior year, came back, went to infantry school in Fort Benning again after senior year. And as we returned from AIT, as Advanced Individual Training, they sort of, okay, people go, North Jersey, come over here. As you all know, we're going to Iraq in June. And I'm like, well, who knows? I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And so, I found out I was going to go to Iraq in 2008. And
What was that experience like?
Well, on the whole, it was hot and sandy. Now I have a much different perspective. I mean,
I'm sure at the time there's a lot to take in.
like I said, I grew up very conservative and sort of, America, kind of ideology. And so, I was scared shitless, obviously. It was terrifying. I worked as a prison guard in the largest detention facility in the country, called Camp Bucca. And, we're the bad guys. We're the bad guys. That's just plain and simple. We're the bad guys. We have been for a long time. And it wasn't until I got to college and I was able to sort of make sense of some of the things that sort of started to think over there, and sort of getting a historical perspective to back up that feeling that, like, are we the baddies?
Do you feel like that a lot of your perspectives from going away kind of led to where you are now within?
I wouldn't be who I am today without that. I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but I wouldn't be who I am without it. I'm not proud of it. I'm not happy to be associated with an illegal aggressive war occupation of a country that didn't attack us, certainly. But it definitely gives me more of a leg to stand on when I try to argue against foreign interventions and things like that, in my personal writings and stuff. And it definitely informed my focus for political science, where I focused on political transitions and revolutions and things like that.
Because you came back in 2009, is that right? What was it like coming back and kind of figuring out your next step from there?
Oh, dude, I felt like the world was my oyster. I was so baller. I had I got paid like $40,000 for the whole year, tax free, which is, at the time, I was woo,
Exactly.
I was excited. I went on a bunch of vacations to like Ocean City, Maryland, and wasted all of that money.
Oh no.
I pretty much wasted all that money, and I was in the best shape of my life because I had a guy over there who I was friends with who just beat the shit out of me in terms of like the gym. We had nothing else to do. We worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in a guard tower, and then you're doing push-ups in the guard tower. We'd come back, we'd spend like an hour and a half, 2 hours at the gym, and then just pass out and do it all over again every day. And it was just this weird sort of like, I don't know if you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, but the chamber that he goes into, where, he goes in there for 10 minutes, comes out, or he goes in there for 10 minutes and comes out. In reality, in his mind, it's been 12 years or whatever, right?
And that's how you felt.
Everything, the government puts everything you do on pause. So my loans, anything I had, bills, debts, my job has to give me a job back if I had a job, which I definitely didn't. I quit. I quit my job. I was like, I don't care.
Well, that's not what they think.
Yeah, well, if I did, everything gets put on hold. It's not like it's like prison. I literally was in a prison, but I was a guard. It's like prison, but like they like you. It's a good version where you go and do something really terrible and really challenging, but when you come back, the whole system is bent to make sure that, in some ways. Now, there are other people who don't come from or don't have the familial support that I had or privileges that I've had that do not get supported, or maybe got more affected by some of the things they saw or did over there that are not supported in varying ways. I'm not trying to say that. But for me, it was literally the perfect situation for me. Someone who joined because I wanted free college, not because I had no choice to do anything. So that's it's a little different story. But I was like a 20-year-old white dude, in his prime, and I just got back from deployment and I was about to go to college on a full ride because of the tuition pay. So yeah, I was living the dream.
I took a look at your resume too that you had posted.
Shit.
So I don't know. I'll be honest. That was one of the most interesting resumes
Which one's
I've ever seen.
Which one? The long one or the blue one?
Blue one.
Oh, the blue one. Okay,
Right.
yeah. You like that little power bar at the bottom?
I was waiting to bring that up.
It's funny. I got that idea from someone who I was on a search committee and thinking to hire, and I saw they didn't do the whole like explode. For those who don't see it,
I was going to say for those
it's like level ups. It's like there's 5 bars.
Like power bars.
Power bars for each of like skills that are hard to translate on a resume, like teamwork or collaborative instincts or grant managing or whatever. And then at the bottom, just to be, because I'm a corny asshole, I put like enthusiasm or something, and the 5th bar is like shattered, and it's like so much.
Which I don't know if you've seen that here so far, but
I'm pretty proud of that. Not gonna lie, I was pretty proud of that one. It didn't get me any of the jobs I applied for. Because I've used that resume to apply for jobs, and I've gotten to the final rounds of those.
Is that
before,
something that you'd recommend for others, is to kind of think outside the box?
I would. I mean, as somebody who's on a search committee, I was looking at it and I was like, "Dope, that's cool. I'm stealing that." And I'm
no, because I mean, if you've probably seen most resumes that come past you, it's just like my resume is the same way, just text.
Yeah.
And I feel like with that kind of opens up like a new door of like I already know who's walking in, and here he is.
I mean, being on a search committee is a great way to learn how those kind of hiring processes work. And the sad part is, I guess it depends, but the sad part is that it is so subjective. It's so subjective. It's literally just, I like to tell people, don't ever go to job fairs because they're useless and they parade you around like you're a piece of meat. And you like parade in front of people like, oh, please pick me, sir. Please pick me, sir. And they don't like it either. They're going there. It's like going to speed dating and stuff. Like it seems desperate. It's weird stuff. Instead, go to like adjacent events. Go to like conferences and things like that. Because the majority of, in my opinion, the way I've seen people hired is if you are a normal human being who I can tolerate being around. Most of the jobs that are out there, in most cases, due to the Henry Ford, to be honest, and the idea of compartmentalization. Most jobs are not like super high skilled, impossible to do jobs that only a select few people can do. Most jobs are teachable. In fact, I would say almost every job is teachable. And the real challenge is dealing with your coworkers on a daily basis.
Right. It's about
and
fit.
Workflow and fit. But fit, of course, and that's the problem because that then becomes fit or fit the culture is really another way that, white supremacy functions at the same time and class barriers that the right fit is somebody who, can afford to do, who has Starbucks or can afford to pay for things or has a credit card or whatever it is, dresses a certain way and can afford certain clothing. So there's a double-edged sword there. But a lot of it is just, can you tolerate me on a daily basis?
And
if you think you can,
your research a bit too, right?
In what way? Which way?
With your research, have you researched any of these topics in terms of?
Oh, like the structural power and stuff. Yeah, I was really into critical theory in college, and racial hierarchy and social theories about how, especially around humor and comedy, and how those narratives are perpetuated or maintained. So that was like I said, I came from a really conservative family, and that sort of transition, not just American imperialism consciousness as well, but then class consciousness, racial consciousness, dealing with my own white identity and privilege. That was really rough for me, and I resisted a lot of it. And I went through, several years of really trying to interrogate like that kind of stuff to figure out, well, like what am I? What am I supposed to do about it? What's my role in this system? And how do I do better?
Do you feel like self-awareness plays a big role into that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be. But, I mean, of course, self-awareness tends to come with a lot of self-criticism and, insecurities. I think at one point I got, like, really, really anxious about it. I started having these, like, anxiety attacks because I would just record myself in conversations while I was talking to people. So I could go back and listen to myself and be like, do I sound like an idiot? Like, do I sound like an asshole?
What type of people are these? Were they just
just regular people. I mean, I think I have a recording of me getting fired at one point, which was interesting because I knew some stuff was about to go down. That was more like me being a criminal justice major and thinking everything's a goddamn court case. Like, but it was like that. I got really, you can go down a really bad path with that. And there were some times where, like, mentally, it really wasn't healthy to be so critical and self-aware. There's a point where you got to, like,
Were you able to move past that?
Well, I think so. Yeah. All right.
No, but
I wouldn't tell you if I wasn't.
What was the process of that? Was there something that stood out to you that really made
Reading.
the change?
It's books, man. It's books. The thing I loved and the thing I missed the most, I think, is having a mentor that was not just a professional mentor, but sort of a philosophical or ideological, guidepost. I wasn't just listen to anything they thought verbatim, but it was nice to be able to engage with critical arguments and actual debate and discussion about these issues that are not just the sort of punditry that you hear, very surface level. They're not actually talking about a lot of the issues or underlying structures. And to be on a college campus in one, especially one that is so geared towards that and has such an amazing faculty that are willing to open up and have these kinds of discussions. I mean, I had some tough discussions with professors. I would go to their office hours. I told you, I attached myself at the hip to them. Because I think a lot of it was that I took that year off and I wasn't sort of just going through college because you're supposed to do that. Once I realized like, oh, this is super valuable and I can learn things and I should take advantage of this. that's where it changed, and that's where I really was able to interrogate some of these things beyond the sort of like general discomfort that you might get when you run up against, something that makes you upset.
How do you address that with a student that comes in with that mentality at first, and then wants to switch that mentality that you just described?
Oh, you're saying like sort of like wants to...
Someone that just kind of finds themselves in college and then realizes more to take advantage of those opportunities.
Oh man, I mean, I would love to embrace them. My thing is embrace and empower them and give them anything, within reason. I struggle with that too, because I don't know how much of what my professors were giving me in terms of their interactions was pedagogical, in the sense that they understand how human beings learn, and therefore you introduce different things at different stages. That's a huge part. Like a lot of times, and you'll see this with people often who go to college and come back and they're dissatisfied with their own family or whatever. I did that for a while because you're not caught up, you're not on the hippest lingo or the discourse.
And how do you address that?
And you forget that, like, dude, you just spent 3 years getting to where you are now, and that's all you did. You literally lived in the college bubble just to get to that point. What an asshole you are to go back to other people who have full-time jobs to think that, boom, all of a sudden they have to be on your level or they're beneath you. It's such an arrogant thing.
Of course.
And that's another. There's just so many layers of that self-awareness.
But how does one address that? How does one even know that that's going on? It's not something that's discussed openly.
What, when you're talking about, like, you mean sort of being a dick to people? Or
in your words, not.
How are you?
Well, I guess like
catch yourself, kind of thing?
Yeah. How do you catch yourself? How do you even know that it's going on? It's not something that's an open conversation. A lot of these conversation points aren't open conversations. And how are you, if you don't go to college, or if you're not aware in college, how do you make?
A lot. It's difficult. Books is a simple, easy answer, but it's not that easy, because then what books? Like, am I supposed to read like Ben Shapiro's books now? Is that that's going to guide me towards this enlightened perspective? Probably not. Am I going to, Rachel Maddow's book? No, she had a good book, Drift, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, that's another issue. It's, to be sort of a pretentious asshole, the Plato's cave sort of, metaphor, the allegory of the cave is a great starting point, but it's another example of how it's just, you have to start somewhere and keep going.
Right.
Because the whole point of the cave is that someone pulls you out of the cave, right? And then you're able to see reality, for what it is and all that.
Mm.
But who is this person pulling you out? How do you know they have good intentions? And
Right.
the same thing can apply to a lot of sort of this kind of stuff. And we see it on the internet. A lot of people rely on the algorithm to bring them to those places.
Right. And
They watch YouTube videos.
That ties right back into journalism. Is what are you reading? Especially, like you said, you got to read.
It's media literacy in a lot of ways. And I give talks about this to high schools and stuff, and it's something I'm constantly having to refigure out. But it's about epistemology. It's how do you know what you know? And how do you know what you know? Blah, 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 blah. You go on, and it's sort of this recursive loop. And I think a lot of the conversation about media literacy, in the sense that it's used to combat fake news or misinformation and disinformation, is really just, in many ways, the establishment trying to wrest control back of the narrative that they've lost. Mm-hmm. And no, this is how you're supposed to think, and that actually turns people off. But we tell kids from the beginning, this whole majesty around critical thinking is, never trust anything, be skeptical in the actual meaning of the word skepticism. But we don't tell them where to go after that. We pull them out of the cave, and it's like, cool, here's reality, peace,
And that's essentially what kind of happens.
And what are they supposed to think? Now they have this sort of like Cartesian blank slate kind of a thing, where they have to figure out, okay, what have I been lied to about, and what is based in truth, or what is the good advice that people give? What are the myths and social mores that it makes sense because they're based on long-standing traditions?
And that's not something that's addressed very often.
No,
it's
not
more or less
close.
something that people have to find out about.
Certainly not in high school.
But how can that issue become addressed?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
And I think anybody I would love to hear suggestions and little steps people can take, but I don't know if it's a situation that can just be fixed. And I think that's a lot of the issues with the sort of media literacy, is that there have been attempts. I mean, you have things like NewsGuard, which is like a browser extension that'll give a trust this website or not. It's about the gatekeeping. Yeah. I mean, but they give a check mark to Fox News. And it's like, what? How many? Did we forget that all the studies that say if you watch Fox News, you're less informed than if you just don't watch news? Like, there's just so many contradictions, and there are so many good faith attempts to address the issue that either don't go far enough, whether it's because that they don't have enough money or the scope or the problem or whatever. But there are also some that are just disingenuous. It's just another layer of the same problem. And I think it starts internally. It starts with somebody taking a step back and saying, is it possible that I'm wrong about this? Mm-hmm. If it's possible, what other options are there? And it's about, really, in my mind, it's about losing the ego. It is about ego death. It really is about taking yourself out of the story, removing yourself as a main character, or even a supporting character if you're more of those introverted people. But everybody thinks they're the good guy in their story. Nobody thinks they're the bad guy, and if they do, it's usually because of some justified reason or slight. But in most cases, they're the protagonist, and it's hard to address the flaws in your own, character if you are unwilling to even admit that there may be flaws, and that's whatever reason that wherever that comes from. But
especially students or members of the working class that don't know what they want to do, how can they kind of follow this style of thought and say, I want to take the next step into something, but they're not really sure where to go?
Ask people, ask professors, ask staff, ask other students, ask, I'm happy, I'm optimistic because the sort of culture around these kind of conversations may not be mainstream and open, but it's way better than it used to be. I mean, the stigma around even seeing a therapist or seeing a psychiatrist is, even in the late 90s and early 2000s, and there's still stigma. But it's way less, and there's way more openness in the culture, a lot more space for talking about this kind of stuff and being willing to be seen as vulnerable or searching or something like that. Also, don't be afraid to put a book down. If you read, my rule is like 100 pages or a third of the book, I give up on the book. If I'm not into it, I can give up on it, and that's fine. It's hard for some people to do, but things like that, knowing when to step back. Being engaged and hungry to read more, read the things. My thing was I instinctively gravitated towards the thing that made me the most uncomfortable. Race, gender, class, things like that. Anytime when, psychology, self-reflection, anytime I felt intrinsically like, I didn't want to talk about it, race was the big one. That's where I tried to go towards there. And it's not going to be comfortable in most cases. And I'm still not done.
Do you feel like a lot of these internal conversations that you've had, do you feel like it's going to lead you towards something in journalism that hasn't been done yet?
I don't know. I don't even know if I've done insofar as I've done journalism. It was like that 1 or 2 years that I wrote stories for my blog that I started, right? Yeah. And I'm not trying to downplay, but I kind of am. I don't consider myself a journalist. Yeah. I'm journalism support, if anything. I'm still in sort of the jack of all trades, master of none thing. I think it's sort of the way that our culture and the society is set up. It incentivizes almost insect level specialization. Like everything, especially someone who I thought was going to be on a PhD track, which is really just there's this huge body of knowledge, and you get to nudge that much. That's huge.
This coming from someone that was in an AUD program.
Oh, you were? Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm much more inclined to dabble in many things and become familiar. I like understanding why and how.
But for everything.
For whatever interests me. Yeah, I mean, you'll never catch me just going to get a math degree. Like I still am not. I would love to learn how to code. I would love to learn how to do those kind of things. But there are certain
even
areas
over the course of your experience, you've had so many skills that you listed on there. How are you
we all have so many skills. You just have to remember and take notes about what you did. One thing that I did was super helpful. Is I just started saving emails or sending myself things and tagging my emails when I did something or I worked on a project, or I gave a talk somewhere, or I participated in something. There's a lot that you've done. You wouldn't be surprised. Even, if you have siblings, interpersonal communications is huge. I mean, I'm not saying lie. I'm not saying that. Embellish. What I'm saying is that I'm not even saying embellish. You don't have to, is what I'm saying. Neo, when you're ready, you won't have to dodge the bullets. No, but you have so many skills. You have so many things you've done just by being the nature of being a human being in the society. You are someone who can navigate it to whatever degree, and there are things along the way that you have to do and the various quests that you go on that allow you to accumulate these kinds of skills. And it's just about remembering, oh wait, yeah, I know how to do this. I'm not certified, but they didn't ask if I'm certified. I'm not saying I'm certified. I'm saying I can figure it out. And that, I think, is the biggest thing that I like to say on my strengths is that if I don't know it, I'll learn it. I'll figure it out. Give me a bit. And also, especially in journalism, nobody knows what the hell's going on right now. And that's terrible in many ways, but it's also kind of convenient and also because if you don't know what's going on, I never thought I knew what's going on. So we're basically the same, and you're an expert. So I'm an expert. You know what I mean? I'm not saying speak with, the authority that you don't have necessarily, but I'm saying don't be afraid to sit down and critically think about these things and then try to address them, or approach them. And don't be, you're going to have imposter syndrome. It happens. But remember that everybody else does, and in a real sense, faking it till you make it is just means practice until you're good.
Making sense out of nonsense.
Right, exactly. Or chaos is a ladder if you're a Game of Thrones fan. Yes.
As yourself.
Yeah. So
now you narrate a podcast.
I do, yeah. I DM'd a guy on Twitter, this guy Matt Keyser, after Trump was elected. He started this blog/newsletter. It was ad-free. It was just for him. It's called What the Fuck Just Happened Today. And he just literally, like it says, there was so much happening in the news that he just was compiling it for himself. What happened today? Here's the big stories, a little summary of what happened. And I saw it was like the no ads thing alone and the sort of punk rock tone to like I like the bad word in there. It was fun.
Yeah.
And I loved it. So I subscribed and I read it. I'm like, holy shit, this is great. But it comes out, he's on the West Coast. So he put out the first thing at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon at his time. It was like 5 or 6 here. So I would be coming home every day and I get the email while I'm in my car. And I'd be like, okay, well, I can't read this now. And by the time I get home, I forget. And so I DM'd him. I sat up in my apartment one day and I just read what he wrote, put a little bit, music or whatever on each side, end plates, and then DM'd him on Twitter a SoundCloud link and was like, hey, man, I explained that, why I made it. And I was like, I want to make this for you on a regular basis. He took like 3 weeks to get back to me. It took forever. And I was like, oh, God, he hates it. I'm terrible. I'm trash. And then he was like, yo, well, let's try it. I'll pay $1,300 to try it for 2 months. And I was like, did I just manifest money out of nowhere for making noises with my face? This is crazy. And so then I started doing it, and I did it every day.
What made you want to reach out and DM him?
I was bored. And I felt
because
bold.
It kind of ties back to your Halo website too. Is that you're a creator?
I was just tinkering. Yeah. I think that's really what it is. I just was making stuff. I just like making things. And
did you know that he was going to reach out and offer you $1,300?
Oh no! I told him I would like to do it for him on a regular basis, with the implication that fucking pay me for what Yeah. But I would have been happy with the learning experience, partly because I would have had the ability to like get learning experiences that don't pay, which is another huge problem with the labor industry in the United States, especially student labor. But yeah, I was like, there's nothing at stake. If he doesn't answer me or if he says, boo, this sucks, I'm like, fuck you, dude, I'm unsubscribing. You know what I mean? There's nothing at stake. And in most cases, people find it very awkward to say no to people. So just ask them.
Be the awkward one.
Always ask them. Same thing with raises. You're not going to get fired for asking for a raise. You're not going to get scorned for asking to participate and contribute. And it turns out that he was stressed and overwhelmed because he's doing it all by himself, and it blew up. It went like viral at the beginning. Right. And he's like, had all these thousands of people talking about it. And it was just one dude doing it. And I said, hey, man, I found some way that I could lighten his load or add to what he was already doing with a minimal amount of work. Overlap. That's huge. Like if there's one thing that I would have people take away from how to do better, or is to find areas of overlap where you're essentially doing the same or very little additional work for more benefit or output. And there's so many ways where you can do that, whether it's just finding where there's something that's already written and just reading it out loud, and recording it, or it's going to grad school and studying the job that you already have, which is what I did. So they gave me a degree in my job, and I also was able to get one while I was getting full-time salary. Those areas of overlap in every aspect of your life can be very useful in sort of amplifying the work that you already do and the impact that it has. So, yeah.
What's the next step for Joe Amditis?
Dude, don't ask me that. I don't know.
That's the thing. I don't think anyone really knows.
I got to testify to the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee tomorrow. That's what's next. Next is, I don't know. And I that scares me. But luckily right now, I've sort of built up the worst case scenario dams. Yeah. So like, if any of these things break, I can, try to pivot here. But I mean, I'm flying by the seat of my pants still.
How are you able to balance everything? Are you doing anything different, or are you just?
I don't have a lot of social life. Like 2 solid, good friends that I rely on, and I haven't had a girlfriend in like forever. I don't go out. I don't like looking for dating and stuff. I don't go dating and everything. So I sort of, in some ways, I sacrifice a lot of the other parts of my life in the rationalization I give myself is like, oh, if I'm working on something professional, then I don't have to go running today. I don't have to do my laundry today. Things like that. So right now, the next step for me is to sort of work on readjusting that balance.
Yeah.
I've started running. I quit smoking cigarettes 6 months ago.
Congratulations.
And I've been running. I skipped last week, but I think right now I need to. I'm focusing more on my personal stuff, which is huge. And I neglected that for so long, which is part of the reason I was able to do all these things at once.
Mm-hmm.
And my mentality was like, sacrifice the body for the game, baby. Just go sprint until you get to that checkpoint so you can cruise at a higher level. And to a certain extent, that kind of worked.
Mm-hmm.
But doing that kind of a hustle for so long and then expecting to just be like, whew, done, satisfied, and fulfilled as a human. Now I can just, relax is just not reasonable. And so you have to work moderation and balance into things in addition to actually, overlapping and doing things hard.
So the last thing we want to do is kind of give your last words to a student or someone out there that's working towards their next step and kind of figuring it out. What do you say to them?
Read, do what makes you uncomfortable. Don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and don't forget that nobody knows what the fuck they're doing. So you're no better off or worse off than most other people as well, especially including and especially the people at the so-called top.
Any projects coming up you want to talk about?
We have grants. We have travel grants. If you're in journalism, if you're working journalist, if you're a New Jersey journalist, especially if you are a person of color or from an underrepresented community, apply for these grants. One of them is called the Peer Learning and Collaboration Fund. You can go to bit.ly/peerfund, bit.ly.com/peerfund, either one of those, or just go to centerforcooperativemedia.org, and you can get up to $1,000 to go travel to any state in the United States to visit a colleague who's doing interesting work. So it doesn't even have to be your friend. It can be somebody you contact them. You say, hey, I'm really interested in the work you're doing. I'd like to learn from you. These grants are available. Are you down? Right. So then we'll give you a grant, and all you have to do is go and then tell us what you did. Very low. It's all about go do good work. And so that's the kind of grant. And then there's another one that's for diversity, equity, and inclusion grants for New Jersey journalists who want to go to events hosted by organizations like the Association of Asian Journalists or Asian American Journalists Association, National Association of Hispanic Journalists, LGBTQ groups who are doing conferences in journalism or events that sort of are trying to improve diversity, equity, and inclusion in the field. So get that money is what I'm saying.